Welcome to the Unlocking the Club podcast, where we host honest and direct conversations about journeys of access, personal truth, and reclaiming space. We share our truth so that you can find the key to own your truth, honor your journey, and reclaim your space. Grab your keys, your wallet, your phone, and invite your friends to meet you at the club. Here's your host, Angela Taylor.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Unlocking the Club. I'm Angela Taylor, your guide and confidant on this journey of discovery and empowerment. Here at Unlocking the Club, we do so much more than just talk about what we're doing in our lives. We actually want to dig deep into who we're becoming and who we had to be along the way throughout our journey. This podcast, Unlocking the Club, is about unearthing our truths. It's about sharing our stories, really sharing stories that are raw, that are real, and that are revelatory. My hope is that through these conversations that I have on Unlocking the Club with you and my guests and all of the conversations, my hope is that we actually become great listeners and we uncover new layers of ourselves along the way. So today we're actually going to unlock a conversation that's both necessary and powerful in my eyes. We want to talk about what it means to navigate predominantly white spaces as Black women. From my own 20-year journey in sports and entertainment, I quickly learned the importance of building social capital in male-dominated industries. And that same dynamic is playing out on a global stage today as we watch Kamala Harris navigate the complexities of her role leading into the next election. The conversations that I know I'm having with my friends and family about the coded language and the media narratives that are surrounding her campaign are ones that many of you are probably having too. So we want to dive into that and not just focus on Kamala Harris, but also our own lives and our own journey and how we can learn lessons from the story and through the lens and prism of someone else's journey. So go ahead and get comfortable. Go ahead and put on those headphones, if you will, pour yourself a drink. We're about to have a really good conversation as we take a deep dive with our special guest on this episode of Unlocking the Club. On today's episode of Unlocking the Club, I'll be joined by Monique S. Pearson. Monique is a mindset coach, an international motivational speaker, best-selling author, and a travel guru. She also is a military veteran, government contractor, and trauma survivor who has dedicated her life to helping women navigate male-dominated environments to activate both their personal and professional goals. Monique, the founder of Soaring Without Limits Enterprises, also known as SWOL, has built the Triple T Tribe, which is an online community for women in leadership. And she founded the Professionistas, a charity organization that provides professional attire to disadvantaged women, as well as informal mentorship. Monique is literally on a mission to impact audiences and to train women leaders across industries to set aside their self-imposed limitations and confidently lead in predominantly male spaces and environments. Her expertise and military background earned her invitations to speak and make guest appearances on major platforms across the globe. And so we are so lucky and proud to have Monique S. Pearson join us today on Unlocking the Club. Thanks for tuning in as we share some food for thought in a really soulful conversation with Monique Pearson. Monique, welcome to Unlocking the Club.
Well, thank you so much for having me, Angela. I'm super excited to be here and just go forth in this great conversation. Super excited to be here on your platform.
Well, I have been looking forward to this conversation for the last several days for a number of reasons. We have some mutual acquaintances, and I've heard so many wonderful things about you. I have not had the fortune of being in conversation or company with you previously, but I have spent a lot of time of just like researching all of the amazing things that you're doing. So I'm looking forward to this conversation and to hear a little bit more about the work that you're doing, but more importantly, about who you've had to be along the way. And so first, I just would love for you to share with our audience. You just heard your bio being read. You're doing some amazing things. You founded a number of businesses. But what's not included in that bio? Who is Monique Pearson and who should we get to know on today's episode of Unlocking the Club?
I would say at the heart of who I am, I would describe myself to be a servant. For as long as I can remember, that has been something that has been instilled in me as a young girl as to how I can contribute and be able to help someone else. So it started out in church, in ministry, as far as singing, that is where it started, being able to invoke that atmosphere, set the tone in worship, and then, of course, leading on to the military, serving for 8.5 years in that space, serving as a federal contractor in the Middle East, and then presently as a Department of Defense employee, and then starting my various entities for, I believe, if there was anything that is at the core of who I am, it would be servitude.
Well, that certainly stands out, is that servant leadership that you have exhibited throughout your journey in a myriad of different roles. And Monique, I have to say, I'm truly fascinated, if you will, about the genesis of the work that many of us do. You alluded to it started out singing in the choir in the church and really when you were younger. And I think that oftentimes there really is a catalyst or a trigger for us early on in our life that once we uncover it, it helps us figure out our life's purpose. And so for me, it was I felt invisible as one of the only Black kids in a predominantly white community here in Idaho growing up, and that led me to wanting to be a storyteller, particularly to
Mm-hmm.
amplify the stories of Black women. So I'm curious, Monique, what was the catalyst and or the genesis of the journey to all of the amazing work that you are actually doing?
I would say, well, there's twofolds. On the travel piece, since that is my passion, I knew since the age of 10 that I wanted to travel and see the world. I grew up in upstate New York, never been on a plane. We only went on vacations within driving distance, but there was that innate knowing that there was more to the world than what I saw. And I just knew that I was destined to go out there and see it. So that opened up via the military as far as starting to travel, and it was everything that I imagined that it would be, and that is how that piece came into play. But far as public speaking and starting the entities that I started, all of that has transpired within the past 5 years. So I would like to say that, one, I am a testament to those who may feel as if you are running out of time or that it's too late for you to walk into the calling that has been placed into your life. That is not true. That it is never too late for you to venture into new territories. All of this has spanned for me in the past 5 years, and I am in my season 40. So I would just like to share that even though you may not have known that all of these gifts are within inside of you, they are just waiting for the right opportunity for the bow to be pulled and be open. And for me, it was a result of the pandemic. Having all of that time to be able to sit and reflect on my life and where it stood and was I fulfilled? And the answer came back a resounding no. So I was like, okay, what are we going to do about it? Professionista, my charity organization, launched first. And then shortly thereafter, I launched SWOL. And then once those two doors were opened, it just propelled into writing books. It propelled to speaking. Like all of these gifts were locked inside of me that I didn't know that I had, or maybe I didn't think that I had the capability to do it until I actually tried it. So that is why I was like, people need to be, and I would encourage them to be open to failure, because that can be a learning opportunity or it can lead to success, but you will never know unless you take that chance on yourself.
Yeah, I want to peel back the layers of the onion a little bit on what you just shared. So your season for entrepreneurship, the catalyst was COVID, and that allowed you to maybe have the time and the space to try, right? To try and know that maybe I'll fail, but I have a gift that I want to be able to share with the world. I'm curious, if we step back, like what
Mm-hmm.
is that gift, and how did you recognize, okay, so I want to be able to help professional women navigate male dominated spaces. I want to help my clients navigate trauma that they've experienced themselves. I want to help women through professionistas be able to dress for success, dress for
Mm-hmm.
the job that they want. Like, what was the catalyst? Why are those things that are important to you?
Okay. I'll go back step by step because they all came in different periods of time. So initially, I started off with Professionista because I have always been one who volunteered and served and gave my time in some shape, form, or capacity. So I was living overseas in Italy for 3 years prior, and I just came back to the States 4 months prior to the pandemic taking off. So I was looking into the Dress for Success program where I previously volunteered and helped women, and I just loved being in that servant in that capacity to be able to help. So I looked initially for the local chapter in Philadelphia. That's where I was at that time, and there wasn't one. The closest one was probably, I believe, like an hour and a half away. And I was like, that's not going to be realistic. So God placed on my spirit and was like, you do it. I was like, you
Mm,
who? Who, me? I was like,
yeah.
how am I supposed to do this by myself? I was like, I'm already working a full-time job. I was like, you're going to need a board. You're going to need all the things that will come to be an official 401c. He was like, start where you are and do what you can in your capacity. So I just started telling all of my friends, like, hey, this is what I want to do. I want to set up something similar to the Dress for Success program. I'm collecting professional clothing and attire for women. And would you be interested in sharing your knowledge, serving as an informal mentor in your respective career field of interest to pour into these women as well? Everyone signed up. Then the
Yes.
pandemic hit. So I was collecting clothes for 2 years, just storing them in my garage, storing, waiting for the opportunity for us, one, the doors to be open, one, to interact, and two, to be able to find some type of platform or some type of channel to be able to connect to these women. So it took me probably about a year to make that happen. I connected with Fast Track Services, which is a part of social services department there in Philadelphia. They had me come into their office, speak with all the counselors there. They just started a clothing closet for the disadvantaged for all of their clients and the local community. So I connected with them, providing the clothing as well as informal mentor. And that is how Professionista launched off.
I
And it
want to
was,
jump in here because you're doing something that I think is really important. And what I'm noticing, I think that oftentimes for many of us who are high achievers that are focused on doing, we step over the being piece. And I think the learning, the powerful piece of what you were doing is not just the practice of gathering clothes and putting people together and launching this business, but it's like using your gifts to impact others' lives. And I'm really curious about what is it like, why do you want to, when you have a full-time job, it's in the pandemic, why is this particular business, whether it's Professionistas or your
mhm.
coaching practice, why is that important? Is there some part of your journey that you're trying to make sure that somebody has access to resources that you did or didn't have?
I think I have been fortunate since I was a little girl to always have someone who was a supporter, a conduit,
Mm,
or opened up opportunities for me. And I know that many do not have that fortune. So I just was very thankful knowing one, you mentioned growing up in predominantly Caucasian spaces. So I was bused from a predominantly lower income Black neighborhood, and I went to predominantly white schools from kindergarten to sixth grade. There was only five of us in that school, as far as that were minorities from that entire first 6 years of my education. And I remember looking and feeling as if, or being seen as if, a charity case, so to speak, as seeing, oh, we're helping these disunfortunate Black children. I just remember at a young age feeling and being seen as that way, and the pity of like, oh, she's just to have her here to be in this space and let's pour. You can pick up that energy as a child. So for me, having that experience, I always wanted those who may not have had the financial means, but they have everything else to bring to the table and are seen as a disadvantage to be able to level the playing field for them. So I believe having that experience as a young girl is what really instilled in me that there are underdogs, but we do not have to be the one who people bet against or see as less than. I always wanted, if I had an opportunity to put them on an even playing field, once I had that platform to be able to do so, that was something that was important to me to do.
Yes, that is so powerful. We may be underdogs, but that doesn't mean that we're less than or not
Yeah.
capable of doing things. And I think that is so important for us to share. And we have a lot of not just Black women who listen to this show, but allies of Black women. And I think there's a lot of
Mhm.
people coming out of COVID, out of the George Floyd murder, that want to help, that want to figure out ways that they can be an ally. And one way that you can be an ally is not just seeing us as a pity case, because we can feel that no matter how young or old we may be, but we want you to see our capability and our capacity. And that is
Exactly.
so powerful that you are trying to reframe like all of these resources that may be available, but you're reframing it in a way where it doesn't make people feel uncomfortable, unseen, unheard, and pitied.
Right. Because I think once you come into a room and you feel as if you belong there, and a part of that is our imaging. So I knew that far as that's important, far as one, you are giving an opportunity, a second chance for some of these women to come into the room and to be able to look the part helps you to feel the part. So I was like, okay, that was the main objective is like, okay, until they can get to a position of continuing to be able to pour into themselves, to believe that they truly do belong there. I know that on the outside, helping them to fit in and not have that as another strike against them would help them to make that transition.
I love it. I love it. And that ties into the travel piece as well, which I am going to have to look into because it feels like now in this stage of my life and my journey, traveling is so cathartic for me just to be able to get away, escape, and see new places. But the fact that you, as a young child, were able to, despite not having the ability to travel to a myriad of different places, recognize that there was so much beyond where you were currently the space you were currently occupying. What was it?
Mhm.
Was who was feeding you those messages, or what was it that you yourself was able to convey to yourself that had you believe that and understand it and the power of it?
There wasn't a person. I'm serious
Mm.
when I say that. That was just
Yeah.
innately. I remember at the age of 10 making that declaration out loud that I'm going to travel and see the world. I just didn't know
Mm.
how I was going to be able to do it until, of course, graduating from high school and then enlisting into the military. And I was like, okay, well, this is the gateway.
Yeah.
So that is where it started. And then once I was able to just travel from Germany to Korea, all the places I was able to see in that 8 years, it became my love affair. I was like, okay, I'm never going to stop traveling. Like this is going to be a lifelong love affair between me and
Yeah.
travel because I love how it made me feel to be able to experience other cultures, to have new experiences, to do new adventures, to see new things. So what started me wanting to start SWOL was to give other women that same feeling that travel gave to me. And then the secondary benefits that I got as a result once I started solo traveling, which began probably in 2017. Up until that point, from 1995, when I first got on the plane, to 2016, I always traveled in the capacity, whether it be with family, whether it be with coworkers. It was always someone else with me or on the other side waiting for me. And it wasn't until 2017 when I started my first solo travel as a result of the position that I took, the job that I took in Europe required me to travel to 8 countries that I had cognizance over: Bosnia, so Serbia, Bulgaria, like countries that I would never, ever, ever have
Yeah.
volunteered or willingly gone to. So that also um, empowered me as more, even more so, because I had to go to these countries alone and I was driving all throughout the countryside, everything. So I was like, if I'm able to do this by myself in countries and do it in the capacity of work and where most people would never go, what else am I capable of? So I was like, okay, I'm here in Europe. We have all of these countries here. I'm here for 3 years. Am I going to wait for someone to come accompany me, or am I going to take advantage of this opportunity? So I decided to take advantage, and off that started with a solo travel to 24 countries in that 3 years. But what I noticed also that I didn't get from my previous travels was the sense of empowerment. Naturally, I'm an introvert, stick to myself. hardly speak, I noticed that I started becoming more open to interact with others. It also increased my confidence, which carried over to my professional life and my personal life. And I was like, wow, I started correlating those secondary benefits that travel brought me. And I was like, if it is doing this for me, then I know that it can do it for others. So that also where the mindset work started in as far as launching the journal and the book and showing other women the secondary benefits of travel. And just recently, as of the past year, is the community, the Triple E Tribe, which is for Elevate, Expand, and Explore Your Mindset. Taking all of my experiences and bringing in my circle of thought leaders, those who are leadership coaches, those who are in the wellness space, those who are in the spiritual space, the grief space, bringing all of my networks to be able to pour into the women so that they may evolve physically, mentally, spiritually, financially, 360. So that is how all of that came to be.
Wow, I love the coming together of you literally as a 10-year-old being able to say there's more beyond of where I can just see, right, with my own eyes. And the fact that as an introvert, you recognize that solo travel is allowing you to get outside of your
Mhm.
comfort zone, if you will, to be able to still connect with people along the way is huge, right? That connection
Mhm.
and the confidence that's required when you are traveling to other cultures is phenomenal. What have you've learned a lot about yourself, but what have you
Mhm.
found that your clients are learning about themselves through travel as well?
I think that far as that they're stronger than what they give themselves credit
Mm.
for. What I have found is many are stuck in their tracks because of fear, or one, the priorities, as far as that they're seeing that they're always at the bottom of their priority list, and the guilt associated with giving yourself the freedom to be able to do something that you want to do and not feel guilty for it. To know that is a form of self-care. That is not a privilege, that is not a bonus, that is a form of self-care for you, and far as you're able to serve and continue to pour into others, as long as you continue to make sure that your cup remains above the rim. You're supposed to be serving from overflow, not from your cup itself. And I think many of us continue to operate, myself included. I have to be
Yeah.
mindful of that, of not running on fumes and continuing to push. But I think many came to the same conclusions that I did, that we sell ourselves short of what we are capable of because we are bound by fear, we're bound by our past, or we are bound by what is familiar. And we're not willing to break those chains and be able to expand and explore what else is out there and what we're capable of.
Yes, I was having a conversation with some female executives about a week ago, and we were talking about this subject of fear. And
Mm-hmm.
there's a misnomer that you shouldn't fear anything, like that's the goal, is to not to fear anything. And we're humans, and humans
Right.
have naturally have fears of different things. To me, the most important thing is to be able to name and notice your fears, what the triggers for
Mm-hmm.
those fears are, when they show up, how they show up, and how they either prevent you from doing things or maybe help you lean into things and motivate you to lean in.
Mm-hmm.
What would you say? You've talked about the fear landscape a little bit in what you
Mm-hmm.
were just saying and sharing. Like, how do you help your clients navigate fear?
I would say one, for me, I always say the misnomer that fear is false evidence appearing real. Because many times we come up with a scenario in our head of what an experience is going to be for us because we don't have the playbook, or we don't have anything to relate back to it because we've never had that experience. So we make up one. And most times, if we were to look back at the things that we were afraid of, and once we took a chance and tried it, that scenario we made up in our head was way worse, nowhere near the true life experience. So, what I like to do is one, let's get to the root of the fear. When is the first time that you recall or you remember this fear coming to fruition? And most times it relates back to a childhood incident. So then we'll walk through that incident of what occurred during that time frame, how did that fear come to be, how did you feel, and then going forward, moving forward, Did you ever try to see whether or not this was still your truth? This was your truth at 6. This was your truth at 8. You are now 35, 45, 46. Does this still hold true for you? Do you still want to maintain this as something that is not in alignment with who you are presently, or are we willing to walk together so that we can get you to who your reality to match up to where you're currently at this time? So most times people are open to doing that because they have someone walking with them and not having to face that by themselves. And also looking back and doing that reflective work that, you know what, I have held on to this because this is what I was used to. This was what this experience has been for me for the past 30 years, even though I'm no longer that same individual. So that is typically where we start that journey to help them to be able to overcome their fears and be willing to do and take the steps that are necessary to create their new reality.
Yeah, I want to highlight a couple things that you shared there at the end in particular. One is, how and when do we use fear as a crutch? Because sometimes it becomes a
Mhm.
security blanket, right? Because we don't
Exactly.
want to risk being judged or failing or anything else that is out there. And you're precisely right. Sometimes the fear, whatever we're afraid of, there's something else
Mhm.
that's at the root of the core of it. May be completely different than the thing that you're projecting that you're afraid of. But you also kind of shared is the ability to share that fear with others. I believe,
Mhm.
and that's one of the things that we're trying to curate through unlocking the club, is we've all had these journeys and obstacles that we faced along the way. And I know for me as a Black woman, and my mother, when I was in these conversations with her before she passed, was there's a lot of stories that we didn't share with each other because that fear of being judged, or
Mm.
fear of letting people know that you failed. And on the other side of that truth, by sharing that truth, you can ignite something in somebody else to let them know that they may be having a very similar situation and scenario. And it's not about them or their inabilities or lack of capability, but there may be a system or society that may be preventing them from thriving in certain situations. So being able to disarm your fear by actually
Mhm.
having a conversation is cathartic and empowering in many different ways. Have you found that as well?
I have. I think once I was being willing to be open and be transparent about one of the traumas that may have happened to me. That hasn't happened until probably the past 2 years. Finally, being willing to speak about being a victim of child molestation and how that impacted my life and how I was able to come to a place of healing as a result of that. Typically, our mantra, what happens in this house stays in this house. And
Yeah.
oftentimes, the secrets stay in your house, in your vessel, in your spirit, and you continue to wear that in your fiber of your being into your adulthood because you were trained to keep secrets, and secrets kill. So it wasn't until I became familiar with how that was impacting me and doing the healing work that was required. I found it lethargic to finally be able to use my voice. That was the beginning of, as far as the public speaking, was speaking on that, because for as long as I can remember, my voice has been muted by myself by holding on to secrets. And just the freedom that comes, the relief that comes in being able to share that it is okay for you to speak. You do not have to keep yourself in bondage as long as I did. You can be
Mm.
able to get to your place of freedom way earlier. I think that was also the main primary motivating place that I wanted to start speaking on that topic, to help other women not have to be or get to the place as long as it took me to get here.
Yeah, I sense that there was something deeper of why you're doing all these things. You're doing 150,000 different things and doing them really well. And you can tell it's not just because you're checking a box, but there's meaning behind the things that you've chosen between SWOL or professionistas or the coaching work that you're doing and the speaking that you're doing, that there's some core hurt that is fueling your desire to actually have an impact and to change somebody's life and make sure that some young woman is seen in a way that maybe you felt that you weren't earlier on in your journey. And I was touched by the statement you made that secrets kill, right? They kill one kind of cell, one piece of joy or hope in people on a daily basis. And so I get curious for you, Monique,
Hmm.
as you were holding on to this secret, what was the we've all heard these messages when we were growing up, right? Put your head down, keep quiet, all those different things, like keep your stuff to yourself. Was it an internal message that you had to maintain this secret? Was this desire to protect others and therefore protect yourself? Like, what was it that prevented you until you got to the place where you felt safe enough to do so, to share your story?
Well, first it was repressed. So I was 6.
Mm,
It was repressed memory until 16. And then when the memories came back, I was like, what is the point of speaking now? It's
mm,
10 years. I've lived with this already. This is my thought process as a teenager,
yeah,
unfortunately.
yeah.
And that created a pattern that it didn't matter if something happened to me, just hold it. I just would withhold things and I wouldn't speak on it. And I would just press forward with life like nothing would happen and move on to the next thing. And then we all know that you can only apply so much pressure, continue to build, continue to compress, that it is going to come out in various ways, in some shape, form, or fashion. You will not be able to continue in that pathway, but for so long. So, as I said, it took me probably until 37 that I started to notice the patterns of how life was moving for me, that I needed to work on my communication. I needed to learn how to express myself. One, how to just be able to handle adverse situations that came. For me, it meant just squelching my voice and pushing down whatever my emotions were. And I would say that I was a track star, that I would continue to run from me. I did not want to do that introspective, reflective work as to how adverse situations affected me emotionally. I would just keep my time fulfilled with doing things in order to stop feeling. So it took me all the way to 37 to be able to be like, okay, I'm tired of running from me. I want to go back to the root where everything started and work through these issues and learn how to deal with them effectively versus running away from them. So that's what I mean. I think it took me a while to get here, but I was like, man, I just wish, in hindsight 2020, we all wish that we would have done things differently. But what we can do is help someone else not walk down the same path that you took.
Absolutely. Yes. And popcorn pops at different rates, right?
Yeah.
So some of us have the ability to directly deal with something sooner than others, right? And I do believe from a spiritual standpoint that all in due time.
Right.
And what you've just shared, and I'm so grateful, Monique, for you sharing your story with us here on Unlocking the Club. I can't count the number of people who will be impacted by being able to listen to what your journey was like. And now
Mm.
being able to look back what you would hope to have been able to do earlier to work on you and to prioritize you. I think being able to give ourselves permission is
Mm.
a really important thing. Being able to give ourselves permission to prioritize us. But sometimes we don't know. Sometimes Dr. Resma Minikin has a book, My Grandmother's Hands, that I speak to quite often. And it talks about his grandmother picked cotton. And if you looked at her hands, you just saw like all of these scars from her
Mhm.
hands being torn from picking cotton, but you also saw that they were healed. And so there's
Mm.
for Black women, we have this badge of resiliency that we wear with great
Right.
honor, that we can get through and we can push through and we can ignore our own selves and pain and focus on others and making sure that we take care of others. And to your
Yeah.
point was, you know what, you have to prioritize yourself because it's not going to go anywhere. If anything, it just magnifies over time. And this could be as simple as a microaggression that happens at work, or a comment that one of your colleagues makes, or a partner makes, or something much more significant as Monique went through
Mhm.
in abuse as a child. But if we don't deal with it, being resilient sometimes doesn't necessarily resolve the pain. It just like prolongs the amount of time
Yeah.
that you will hold on to that pain.
Yeah, that's why I said I definitely could speak to the latter, that it
Mm,
just continued to compress, compress, and build, compress. Because I never learned how to effectively deal with issues. I just would suppress them. So yeah, and I think everyone deals on course with their issues in different ways. But I would love to be an advocate to teach young girls, one, to be able to deal effectively with issues and to speak, because a lot of times you end up squelching your own voice. You want to be hidden, and that's where I came to see like all the introverted activities was a form of self protection, to be hidden so I wouldn't be a target. It took me a long time to be able to connect those dots, unfortunately, but I just love that I'm now in a position to be able to share with others who may not have connected their dots, like, hey, you may want to consider this. This may be something you want to be able to look further into.
Yeah, well, that, ladies and gentlemen, listening here on Unlocking the Club, that is the formula. It's unlocking your truth, sharing that story, and reclaiming your power. Like, that is the winning formula. That is what we were trying to do here on Unlocking the Club. And Monique Pearson is somebody who's been able to do it with such grace over the course of her journey. And not only has she been able to unlock the club for herself and her own benefit, but she's actually leveraging all of that to be able to help others. And so, Monique, I thank you for being able to share that part of your journey and the work that you're doing and how you got here and your desire to continue to impact others. And I look forward to finding out a little bit more. So there's so many questions I have for you. We want to pause for a moment, take a quick break, and then we'll be right back on Unlocking the Club with Monique Pearson as we continue to talk about navigating spaces as a Black woman and actually sharing your truth and telling your story in a really powerful way so that you are seen and heard. But this is Angela Taylor, your host for Unlocking the Club. We'll be right back with the Back Nine and Monique Pearson. All right, folks, welcome back to Unlocking the Club. I'm your host, Angela Taylor. And before we let Monique go today, I have a number of different questions that I'd love to ask you here on the Back Nine so that our listeners and viewers on YouTube to get to know you a little bit more. You're doing some wonderful, amazing things. And as you continue to reveal who you are and have had to be along the way, I continue to learn a lot about myself and be able to connect in some really valuable ways and notice places and spaces that I can maybe look forward to navigating differently as a result. So thank you, Monique, for the candor that you've shared and the insight that you've provided, and look forward to dialing back and peeling back the curtain a little bit more here on the Back Nine. You ready?
I am ready.
All right, awesome. Well, the first question I love to ask all of our guests here on the Back Nine is, when you think about, where you are safe to be yourself, besides your own home, what is that place where you feel safest to be yourself?
I would say with my friends and family. And then I think anytime that I am in my position of my gift. So when I am traveling or taking other women to other countries, like I'm excited, I'm taking another group next year to Dubai. I notice when I am in my element of what brings me joy, that is my comfort zone. So those two spaces would be first and foremost where I would find that I'm walking in my true element, in my joy, in my comfort zone.
Yeah, like really finding your team of allies. A good friend of mine, Trisha Stevens, talks about your team of allies, like family and friends that allow you to be yourself. Right, and to feel safe or to feel courageous or brave enough to be yourself. And then I love the fact that travel provides that to you and the joy that it has. It may be another form or shape for somebody else. It may not be travel, maybe it's hiking or some sort of physical activity. But I think in order for us all to find that, like, we have to listen to our inner selves and heal and figure out what it is that brings us joy, and then go get it unapologetically. Go find the spaces and the places and the people who allow you to navigate joy on a regular basis. I love that.
Most definitely.
Yeah, when we talk about earlier, kind of as you were navigating trauma, right? It's overwhelming as you had repressed these memories and then started to recognize that it had been 10 years earlier. And you're like, should I or should I not have this conversation? There probably was a little bit of trepidation, right? That you were navigating. Like, what's the impact of me even mentioning this at this point? I wonder if there are situations as you're navigating these workplaces as a Black female, or as you're traveling as a Black female, are there any situations that you walk into with trepidation every time? And if so, what are those scenarios?
I don't think I walk in with trepidation anymore because I think I was exposed to that at such a young age. Like one in the military, I came in straight out of high school, 18. My field of expertise is missiles, weapons, and ammunition.
Oh,
That
wow.
is predominantly men. So all that I have known since 18 years old, starting with the military in that career field, is being surrounded by men. So one thing that I would say that at that age, of course, there was trepidation because I felt as if I always had to prove myself, that I had to prove myself that I deserved to be in those spaces. And also, as a result, not learning or knowing how to embrace my femininity because I felt like I couldn't afford to in order to succeed and to be seen as an equal in these spaces. So at that time, I recall the trepidation, the feeling, did I deserve to be here? Was I worthy of being in these spaces? And then once I continued to progress up the ranks, fighting to not prove that I deserve to be there, but fighting that you will respect me in this place because I earned my place here. But
Mm,
then being seen as, so it came with other dynamics
yeah.
as I progressed up in leadership roles. So I can recall that at those ages, but at this space now, I have done this for over 25 years. So I know who I am. I know what I'm bringing to the table. So I'm coming in with that confidence, with that assuredness that I had to earn over 25 years of being in this space. So what I choose to do now is to be able to serve as a mentor to help other women make that pathway easier because I didn't have any women mentors to help me. I had to learn that by experience in time served.
Yeah, this is why these conversations are so important, right? Is to be able to see, for the young women that are out there, to see someone like Monique that has been there, done that, and you've modeled exactly what they can do and replicate in order to have a successful trajectory as well. And it strikes me, I was just literally in a conversation with my father, who was in the Air Force for 27 years, and some friends at brunch the other day. And some of the friends were who had been in the military as well were asking him, as he became an enlisted officer, or like what would that journey from going from like just enrolling in the military, right, and not having any
Mhm.
power or leverage, to now, people reporting to you. And he talked a lot about, and actually all of them, as they were sharing, how important it was that from day one, moment one, that first you didn't feel like you had to prove yourself because you'd earned that share, but
Mhm.
that you held everybody to a standard and what those expectations were, and you did not waver. You did not
Right.
waver and let them think that they could treat you or report to you differently than they would from to somebody else that may look differently than you are. In the military, like that had to be, and particularly in the functional areas that you were in with missiles, etc. As the only woman navigating that space, there's no doubt that has correlated to the work that you're doing and the impact that you're having on other women. So kudos to you on that journey. I wonder, as you've had to navigate that space and to not prove to others of
Mhm.
your capabilities and your capacity, what are things in a leadership role that you refuse to hide about Monique?
One, I think being authentically me. There is
Mm,
something about showing up as your true authentic self and not trying to conform to what you think people want to see, what they want to hear, in being you. I think it took me a while also to learn the power that comes with that and people being able to relate to you, even though you may have your quirks, your shortcomings, but they don't expect perfection. What they expect is access, to be able to tap in and access who you truly are. So, one, I think I became comfortable in being able to show that, yes, I may not know this, I may not have the answers to this, but I'm willing to work with you to get you to a position to where you are, and being able to share some of my journey as to how I came to be there to help them in however way I can to progress and meet their own professional goals. So I think one, being able to lay down my shield and expose and show who Monique authentically is the greatest form of power that I found when it came to leadership.
Yeah, that's so important. Like as you were telling that story, Monique, I was thinking about in some of the professional development work that we'll do with clients several years ago when President Obama was still in office. And we showed kind of a split screen of some of his press conferences and interactions in his first term, and
Mhm.
that juxtaposed against his interactions and press conferences in his second term. And in the second term, we were just asking the participants to share what they thought, what they observed. And they're like, he is authentically him in that second term because he wasn't
Right.
worried about what everyone thought. He wasn't
Mhm.
worried about having to get reelected. And he was
Right.
able to show up powerfully in his own perspective every single time. And it was so fun and empowering to see that. And my
Mhm.
question to all of us is, how do we get to that point? How do we get to the point where we aren't worried about things that we can or cannot control and we just show up authentically all the time because it's exhausting, like trying to be
Oh,
something that
well,
you're
it
not.
is. I'm like continuing to have to play a role and worry about, am I checking this box, that box? But I think once I started entrepreneurship, that really enhanced that because I thought I came into this like, oh, it has to be perfect. I have to have this. I have to have that. But I
Yeah.
found that I had more people that were drawn to me when I did not put on cape of or image of perfection and showed up
Mm.
as who Monique was. That is what drew them to me. And I was like, oh, there might be something to this. I don't have to be perfect.
Yeah.
I don't have to have it all together. All I have to do is show up and be me. And those who are called to me will come, and those who are not will not, but they were never going to come to me in the first place. And to accept that you're not here for everyone. You are here for those who God has called you to. And once you are walking truly in who you are, those who are assigned to you are able to find you. They can't find the person who you are copying or emulating or not being. They need to find you, and they only can find you if you show up as your true, authentic self.
Absolutely. If they're looking for somebody that you're trying to emulate, they might as well find that person the original. Like,
Right?
I don't want to go to the original. I don't want the duplicate. So no, that is
Yeah.
so true. And you remind me, we had a guest in our first season, Shantara Hardy, and she talks about perfection is expensive. Like all the
I like that.
time and the moments that we miss trying to be perfect.
Right.
Yeah. Well, so Monique, as you're navigating all these things and trying a lot of different experiences, if you will, have you
Hmm.
discovered your superpower? And if so, what is Monique Pearson's superpower?
I think I have found that part of that, what my superpower is being able to be that person who pours into others and sees more for them than they can see at themselves at the present time. Like,
Mm.
one, to be able to tap into that inner reservoir of getting people to be able to believe in themselves and being the person who is going to be the person that boosts you up until you're able to stand on your own. I know that without a shadow of a doubt, that is a calling and a gift that I have to be able to give light, speak life into others until they can breathe and speak for themselves.
Give light, speak life into others until they can breathe and speak for themselves. It's pretty powerful. It's definitely powerful. And when you think about like that is the endeavor, that is your superpower, and this world that we're living in currently, like when you think about the places and the spaces that you navigate, what is a
Mm-hmm.
story that needs to be told and unlocked?
Hmm. Places and spaces that I've navigated and a story that needs to be unlocked. I don't know why this story is coming to me, but I guess it's coming for a reason, but I'm not sure how
Mhm.
it correlates. But I'm going to share because that's what keeps coming to my spirit. When I was in Iraq, I recall one day, like I worked, as I said, in the ammunition supply point. So every day we were being hit, trying to take out the ammunition. One sense, and when that would occur, you would hear alarms going off. That meant that you had to put on your Kevlar, you had to put on your flak vest, which has the bulletproof metal in there. You will go to a bunker, which is a concrete cover to help protect you from the overhead shrapnel that may arise. So we worked outside, 135 degrees every single day, and the break room was like a little shanty metal covering with a picnic table. I recall I was sitting at the table reading the paper, turning, and when the alarms went off. So I was getting up to get my stuff to go to the metal, to the bunker and the cover. And I heard like a loud pop, but I didn't know what that was. So once we got the all clear and we came out from the little construction bunker, and I went back to where I was seating, and where my hand was turning the paper was the casing of a bullet. What I heard was the bullet coming through the mental shanty, popping through there and landed in the paper where my hand was, where I was turning the paper. Yes.
Wow.
So what I came to, I don't know, as far as what I was like, I saw that, and it was not a big reaction. I think I got to a place when you're in the midst of turmoil, when you're in the midst of chaos, which that was every single day, being attacked and possibly could be maimed or lose your life, unfortunately, which some did, that you get comfortable in those spaces. To the point I was not even phased that a bullet just came through my head. So what I would say as a result of that story, now I know why I had to share that story, is to not get comfortable in toxicity, to not get comfortable in being less than what you are called to be, to not be comfortable with being average, to become comfortable and continue to push yourself, not push yourself, but to walk into the greatness of we all have inside of us innately, and show up and be able to share the gifts that only you uniquely have, to not become comfortable in being complacent, being average, to blending in, to become comfortable in being that example of excellence that others can follow. I didn't know how that story, why I share it, but that's where it
That was a word. That was a word, my sister. That was powerful. And that might be another book that you got coming up right there, because that plays out in a myriad of different ways. And if I were to interpret what you're saying, right, not getting comfortable with complacency and toxicity doesn't mean that it's dependent on the outcome. I think a lot of people focus so much on an outcome versus just the process. There's a lot of winning that takes place throughout the process and the journey, not just on the outcome. And so if you, every moment of every day, of every week, of every month, of every year, focus on the positivity, right? That growth mindset that we often talk about, and not being complacent, and whatever that means. It doesn't mean that you have to spend 10 extra hours on something or be perfect. It just
right.
means that it's a mindset. So I love that, of not being complacent, and that's pretty powerful. That is very powerful. And I have a couple more questions for you, because I think that I want to leave on that note. That has me. My mind is twirling.
I didn't know. I was like, why is this
story
coming to me? I didn't know. I was like, how is this going to connect to her question? It just connected. That came as I was speaking. So I was like, oh, I just now get to the point like when God's places something on me to say or do, and I would encourage that too, to listen to your spirit that is never going to guide you wrong.
That was a great exhibition of being able to listen to your spirit. You may not know what it means, right? But you will be able to determine the meaning through being able to share it. And so as you were on this journey, I'm curious for you, Monique, when you're at your best, and however you personally define being at your best, what is true for you?
What is true for me is laughter. What is true for me is a feeling of lightness, and feeling of exuberance, and a feeling of joy. When I am smiling, when I feel light, when you can just see and feel that joy exuding from me, that is when I'm at my best.
Well, you were at your best today on this episode of Unlocking the Club, and all the greatness and the great things that you're doing. We appreciate every bit of everything that you are doing to have an impact on one person at a time through your journey. So thanks for joining us here on Unlocking the Club. Well, Monique, is there any place where our listeners and viewers of the Unlocking the Club can find you? And please tell us about any special projects that you are working on here in the future.
Yes, they can reach me on all social platforms at Monique Pearson or my business pages at soaringwithoutlimits.com. And also, far as upcoming projects, you can also find me a part of the Champ I Am Summit, which is going to be in September. You can register, that is free access at www.champiamsummit.com. I'm going to be joined with 35 powerhouses in their respective realms. And then also, there is a community for women who are in male dominated spaces that are looking for a safe haven. You're looking for someone who is going to lock arms with you and walk those spaces. And so you don't have to continue to walk them alone. That is www.elevateexpandexplore.com to become a part of our community. So thank you so much, Angela, for having me here. And so glad to be with you.
Absolutely. Yes, and this has been fantastic and an absolute pleasure being able to be in conversation with you and to hear your story. I know I'm going to keep following Triple E and all the amazing things and master classes, et cetera, that you have available from time to time on your website and through your website, and the impact that you're having with so many different people. So Monique Pearson, thank you so much for joining us today on Unlocking the Club.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Awesome. Well, as expected, so many dimes were dropped, and Monique certainly finished the back nine and the conversation in such great style. I appreciate the wisdom and the grace that Monique displayed today, and the candor and insight, frankly, in being able to share her story. There are so many nuggets that resonated with me, particularly at the end, is that we do not have to be the one that prevents ourselves from finding joy, right? Like, we need to unleash our story and our power and our joy and find those spaces and those people that allow us to be our authentic self. So many powerful messages were shared today on Unlocking the Club. I hope you enjoyed the conversation I had today with Monique, but that doesn't end the conversation. There's so many places that we are continuing the dialogue about the amazing stories of Black women across the globe. So make sure you follow Unlocking the Club on all of your social platforms. Make sure you go ahead to your podcast platform of choice, whether it's YouTube, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, etc., and go ahead and hit that subscribe button so you can make sure that you are the first to know about new episodes that are being dropped. We have a lot of great conversations coming up and some really special content that we're planning for the rest of 2024 and 2025. So thanks again for joining us here on Unlocking the Club. If you enjoyed the conversation, hit us up on social media. Let us know what you enjoyed. And please feel free to leave a review so that others who are finding their way to Unlocking the Club can understand the impact that we are trying to have as we share these amazing voices and these conversations with some powerful leaders across the landscape. So for Angela Taylor and the crew at Unlocking the Club, thanks again for joining us on Unlocking the Club. And until next time, peace.
Thanks for listening to Unlocking the Club. If this conversation resonated with you, subscribe to our podcast on iTunes or your favorite streaming platform so that you can experience every episode. And follow us on social media, where you'll hear about future guests, access special features, and connect with this amazing community. Head on over there and let us know how you are unlocking the club. Until next time, peace.